second situation, this is in John chapter 5. And this is a man at Bethesda. And just a little side note, Bethesda means house, in the original Hebrew Aramaic, house of loving kindness, bet chesed. And loving kindness is one of the core descriptions of God in the Old Testament. Your loving kindness endures forever. Check out Psalms 136. It's repetition endlessly. So in this house of loving kindness, this pool of Bethesda, and it's by the sheep gate, sounds reasonable, sheep gate in Jerusalem, because Jesus is the Lamb of God, visiting the house of loving kindness. At this Bethesda place is fascinating because it says there's a big pool, and there's lots of lame, blind, and weak people gathered by this pool. Now, have you ever been in a community where there's a consistent impairment? Like if you've been with a group of blind people, or you've been with people of hearing impairment, or you've been with people who have like paralysis or some kind of sickness. If you're in this community and you stay in that community for a while, sometimes the mentality starts to be pervasive on an illness or a weakness or an impairment. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you go to communities that are inherently poor, it's a pervasive mentality. If you go to my brothels in developing countries, you're like, your brothels? Yes, my brothels, because they're my babies and toddlers, if you know about night care. But if you go there, there's a pervasive mindset. And sometimes when we're with people who are sick, impaired, have a deficiency, or a broken perspective, it's contagious, and we have that as well. And so this guy is sitting there with all these people, and he himself has been sick for 38 years. So this isn't just like, I got sick with something and 6 months later and I'm better. This has turned into not just a sickness, this is a mentality, an identity, right? It's who he is. That's all he's basically all he's known. And I like what Jesus says to him in John 5, verses 6 and 7. When he saw him sitting there and in that condition for a long time, Jesus says to him, "Do you want to be well?" I think that's a really essential question. Do you want to be well? Rhetorically, everybody's like, of course I want to be well. You think I like being sick? But family, when you're well, it means you have to give up compensatory behaviors. Things that you do that you've grown accustomed to accommodate the sickness. So if Jesus makes us well financially, then that means we have to stop borrowing and or stop spending. If Jesus makes us well on the inside, then that consumer mentality that I can never get enough, the mentality and the behaviors have to change. Do you want to be well? I talk about this back when I was in college. I remember playing basketball, and I was doing intramural basketball, and I ran in. I was like a freshman. I undercut. I wasn't supposed to do this, but the opponent was running down doing a layup, and I wanted to undercut her to steal the ball. And when I did, I ran into one of my teammates who was super thick and very strong, and I bounced off of her and dislocated my shoulder. That serves me right. Undercutting, you shouldn't be doing that. But I dislocated my shoulder, and I had surgery on it. You're like, you and your shoulder, you and your concussion, all of your weird injuries. It's true. But it's interesting because this shoulder, and even now, like many decades later, when I take off a sweatshirt, I have a certain way to do it, and I don't even think about it. I take it off in a way that I'd never lift up this shoulder. And I'm like, this shoulder is now perfectly fine, and I've had surgery, and it's very strong. I don't need to compensate for it anymore. But the mentality of the injury has conditioned my behaviors. So when you ask the question, do you want to be well? It's not just, do you want to have the physical improvement, but are you willing to change your priorities, your values, your behaviors, your actions, your conversations. Do you want to be well? It's a really important question. But you're like, what does that have to do with somebody missing? Well, the very next part, the man answers him and says, I have no man to help me get in the pool. So the read on this was, the pool, an angel would come down, stir the pool, and whoever jumped in first got healed. I don't know why. Don't get too distracted on that. That's just what the whole thing was. And if you were lucky, you won the lottery, you were first in. So, but the guy's like, I don't have a man. I don't have anyone to help me. Somebody's missing. I need help, and nobody is here to help me. The missing man. And I like that Jesus shows up because he is our missing